old, and for as long as I can remember, the quiet tick of gears has been the soundtrack of my life. While other people found joy in noise and crowds, I found mine in silence and precision. My tiny workshop tucked away in the spare room of my apartment was more than just a workspace, it was my sanctuary. Daniel, my boyfriend of 6 years, used to call it my hobbit hole. He meant it as a joke, but I always liked the sound of it. That Friday night, while the city outside pulsed with neon and music, I was bent over a century-old trench watch, coaxing it back to life with patient hands. Every delicate click of the gears, every faint smell of oil and metal grounded me. This was where I belonged, where the world's chaos couldn't touch me. My phone buzzed on the workbench. Daniel's name lit up the screen. My lips curled into an automatic smile before I even answered. But his voice on the other end wasn't the warm tone I once knew. It was loud, sharp, and slurred, drowned in the echo of a bar and the shrill laughter of his friends. "Hey, Katrina," he drawled, his words stretched thin by alcohol. "What are you doing? Still hiding in your little cave with your toy watches?" I ignored the sting. "Just working. You sound busy." "Oh, just out with the guys," he said, laughter bursting through the receiver. "Talking about life futures, real ambition." I knew what was coming. I felt it in the pit of my stomach. His voice shifted from mocking to something colder. "We actually made a list," he said. "A list of all the things you don't have." The words hit me like a stone to the chest. "A list?" I asked quietly. "Yeah," he laughed, and his friends cackled in the background. "No car, no big house, no fancy job title, no high life, just watches and contentment. Cute, but kind of sad." I froze. My breath caught halfway in my throat. My workshop, my passion, my entire way of living reduced to a punchline. My silence gave him confidence. He went on twisting the knife. "You're not a prize, Katrina. You're a project. And honestly, I don't have the time or energy for projects anymore." The laughter on the other end was merciless. I could almost see their sneers, their mocking eyes. My life, my choices, my love, my years with him were entertainment for strangers. My hand trembled not from rage, but from something colder, a realization. I didn't fight back. I didn't cry or beg. Instead, I placed the phone down on the workbench and ended the call without a word. The silence that followed was deafening, but it was mine. The trench watch lay under my lamp, its gears half exposed, waiting for me to bring it back to life. My hands, once steady, shook as I picked up my tools again, but as I adjusted the tiny spring, something inside me hardened. I wasn't just fixing a watch anymore, I was fixing myself. For the first time in years, I understood something. Daniel's voice, that smug, cruel laughter, wasn't just the sound of a breakup. It was the sound of a door slamming shut. And in that silence, another door was waiting for me to open. The morning after Daniel's cruel call, the apartment felt suffocating. The air was heavy, as if the words he had spit at me had seeped into the walls overnight. I moved quietly around the kitchen, making coffee the way I always did, precise, measured calm. But inside, I was bracing for a storm. Daniel emerged from the bedroom, still smelling faintly of last night's alcohol. His hair was messy, his shirt wrinkled, but his expression was strangely composed, almost rehearsed. He put his phone down with a dramatic sigh. "Katrina, we need to talk." I didn't respond immediately. I stirred my coffee, letting the silence stretch until he grew uncomfortable. Finally, I looked up. "Okay." He folded his arms, adopting the posture of a man delivering a business pitch. "This isn't working anymore. You're just too comfortable, too content. And I need more. I want more." The words weren't a surprise. He had been slipping away for months, climbing a ladder that never seemed to touch the ground. Still hearing them out loud carved something deep inside me. I said nothing. He mistook my calmness for weakness and pressed on. "I've met someone, Sophia. She's brilliant. She runs her own startup. She travels. She knows what she wants. She gets it. She's everything you're not." He paused, waiting for the explosion, the tears, the begging, the fury. I saw it in his eyes, that smug anticipation. But it never came. Instead, I sipped my coffee and placed the cup down gently. "All right." His jaw tightened. He wasn't expecting that. "That's all you have to say." "What else is there?" I asked, my voice calm, flat. "You've made your decision." I stood the chair legs, scraping softly against the tile. Then I walked past him into the bedroom. I pulled out a duffel bag from the closet and began folding clothes with the same precision I used in my workshop. Daniel followed me, his frustration simmering. "You're just going to leave like that." I didn't look up. You said you don't have time for projects. I'm respecting your schedule. He scoffed, incredulous. Don't you want to fight for this? For me. That made me pause. I finally met his eyes, and for the first time in months, I saw him clearly, not as the man I had loved for 6 years, but as a stranger dressed in ambition and arrogance. No, I said quietly, because love shouldn't feel like a competition or a list of assets and liabilities. His face twisted anger breaking through his cool facade, but I turned away, slipping the last of my essentials into the bag. Before I left, I paused by the workbench in my little workshop. Dozens of watches sat in neat rows, each one in different stages of repair. My fingers hovered over them, uncertain. Then I picked up one particular piece, a fractured trench watch, whose glass face was cracked right down the middle. I turned it over in my hand, the gears stubbornly refusing to align. Daniel once told me it wasn't worth the effort to fix that some things were just beyond saving. I whispered under my breath. Some things aren't meant to be fixed. Slipping the watch into my bag, I walked out of the bedroom. Daniel stood in the hallway, disbelief written all over him. You'll regret this, he spat, his voice rising now that he realized he couldn't control the ending. I pulled the strap of the duffel higher onto my shoulder. My voice was steady, almost gentle. Maybe. But at least the regret will be mine, not yours. And with that, I opened the door and stepped into the hallway. The apartment behind me was still buzzing with his anger, but as the door clicked shut, all I felt was silence. Heavy, yes, but mine. For the first time in 6 years, my hands weren't shaking. I moved out that same day. The duffel bag in my hand felt heavier than its contents, but lighter than the years I had carried with Daniel. My best friend Marina opened her door before I could even knock. She had known me long enough to recognize the look on my face. No questions, no judgment, just a hug and the words, "You can stay as long as you need." Her spare room was small, just enough for a bed, a desk, and a few boxes of my essentials. Gone was my cozy workshop, the heart of my old life. In its place was a quiet ache like a phantom limb. But silence, real silence, has a way of healing. There were no more sarcastic sighs, no mocking laughter, bleeding through phone calls, no lectures about ambition. Just Marina's soft humming from the kitchen, the occasional bark of her dog, and the comforting sound of my tools clicking late into the night. I made a decision I would disappear. The first step was practical. I changed my number. Then I deactivated every social media account. No dramatic farewell post, no cryptic quotes. I simply vanished from the feeds of people who once believed they had the right to measure my worth. I became a ghost. But I didn't vanish from myself. In the quiet, I began to build again. Not a relationship, not an image, but a life. I listed a few of my restored watches online, half expecting no one to care. To my surprise, orders trickled in, then more. Soon I had clients waiting weeks for a custom restoration. Every sale, every email from a satisfied client was a small flame in the dark. I was still me. I was still good at something. Maybe I didn't have what Daniel's list demanded: a luxury car, a high rise apartment, a glamorous job, but I had something he couldn't touch: purpose. Meanwhile, news of Daniel's new life traveled through the inevitable gossip chain. Marina couldn't help but share the tidbits, her eyes always searching my face for a reaction. Did you hear, she asked one night over takeout? Daniel and Sophia just got back from Paris. Business class flights, fancy hotels, the works. She's posting like crazy. I only shrugged, stabbing at my noodles with chopsticks. Good for them. But inside, I wondered, how long could that kind of fire burn before it consumed everything? Marina leaned back, arms crossed. People who climb too fast often fall the hardest, you know. Her words lingered long after we finished dinner. I didn't admit it out loud, but I could already feel the shift in the air. Daniel had always been hungry for more, but hunger doesn't end when the plate is full. It grows, consuming everything around it. Sophia might think she was feeding it, but eventually she'd discover the truth: Daniel's appetite wasn't for success. It was for validation. And validation never lasts. At night, as I worked under the yellow glow of my lamp, I sometimes caught myself thinking about the list. That stupid, cruel list he and his friends made. The things I didn't have. But as the gears in the watches clicked into place, as broken springs found new rhythm, I realized something. I didn't need their list. I was writing my own. And every tick of the watches I restored whispered the same truth: some things are worth mending, and others are worth leaving broken. It started as whispers. Marina would come home from work with that look, the one that said she wasn't sure if she should tell me, but couldn't help herself. Word is, Sophia's company isn't doing as well as she pretends, she said one evening, tossing her bag onto the couch. Investors are pulling out. Apparently, the visionary is running out of vision. I nodded, barely looking up from the tiny cog I was polishing. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need to. Weeks passed, and the gossip grew darker. The lavish dinners and designer bags disappeared from Sophia's social media. The glossy travel photos stopped. In their place were long motivational posts about resilience and the grind. Marina showed me one on her phone, smirking. Translation, they're broke. I didn't smile. I only set down my tools and said quietly, it was bound to happen. Daniel's role in all this became clearer as time went on. He wasn't the successful partner he had painted himself to be. He was a leech. While Sophia scrambled to save her collapsing startup, he drained her credit cards, paraded her around at events, and demanded she support him in every way. When she refused, he called her toxic, ungrateful. He turned her into what I once was, an unpaid assistant, a convenient backdrop to his performance. The irony was bitter. And then, just as quickly as he had latched onto her, he was gone. One day, Daniel vanished from Sophia's world. No calls, no explanations. He blocked her on everything, leaving her with debts, unpaid bills, and an empty apartment. Marina relayed the story to me over coffee, her voice low with satisfaction. He left her the same way he left you, like she was disposable. Only this time he didn't find a new Sophia. He just disappeared. I stirred my cup slowly, listening to the gentle swirl of liquid. My face remained calm, but inside I felt a strange mix of emotions. Not joy, not vindication, something quieter, like standing on the shore watching a storm pass. Because by then my own storm had passed. My little watchmaking business had grown almost without me realizing. Orders stacked up, clients returned, and word spread. I wasn't rich, not by Daniel's impossible standards, but I was steady, independent, respected in my small circle. At night, I worked late into the hours, the sound of ticking surrounding me like a heartbeat. Daniel's world was collapsing. Mine was beginning. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was running behind him. I wasn't chasing, wasn't competing. I was ahead in a race I never wanted to run. The first attempt didn't come from Daniel himself. It came through Sarah, a mutual friend who had always floated between us. One evening, as I was finishing up a custom repair, my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. The message was short. Hey, Katrina, it's Sarah. I know you probably don't want to hear this, but Daniel's not doing well. He really needs to talk to you. I stared at the text for a long time. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, but in the end, I pressed delete. A week later, another message. Please just be the bigger person. He regrets everything. This time, I didn't even open it. But Daniel wasn't one to give up easily, especially when he had nothing left to lose. The call came late on a Tuesday night. The number was unknown, but something in me answered anyway. Katrina. The voice on the other end was thin, cracked. Gone was the confident sneer I remembered. It sounded like a man, half drowned, clinging to the last bit of air. It's me, please, I need to talk to you. I sat in silence listening. I was an idiot. Sophia was a mistake. Everything was a mistake. I miss our life. I miss your quiet. I miss you. My hand tightened around the phone, but my face stayed calm, blank. His words washed over me, carrying no weight. I have to go, I said softly and ended the call. The calls didn't stop. Different numbers, different excuses, but always the same desperate plea. Please, Katrina, just 5 minutes. Please. I blocked each one, until one gray Saturday afternoon, when the past walked right into the cafe where I sat. I was meeting a client, a kind man who had commissioned a deep blue 1950s wristwatch for his anniversary. The watch gleamed under the cafe lights as I explained its history. It was one of my proudest restorations. And then, like a shadow, he appeared. Daniel. He stood in the doorway, thinner pale, his expensive clothes now ill-fitting and worn. His eyes scanned the room until they landed on me. For a moment his face lit up hope, sparking in the ruins. Katrina, he breathed, almost a whisper, as if saying my name might pull me back into his orbit. My client looked between us, confused. I excused myself, standing as Daniel approached. Up close, he was even worse. The arrogance was gone, stripped away. What remained was hollow, desperate. Katrina, he said again, voice trembling. Can we talk, please? I looked at him. Really looked at him. This was not the man who once mocked me, who made lists of my shortcomings with his friends. This was a ghost of him, broken, unraveling. Daniel, I said calmly, there's nothing to talk about. His eyes widened, panic seeping in. Yes, there is. I know I was wrong. I let those people get in my head. Sophia used me. She destroyed me. I see it now. I miss what we had. Our quiet life, your patience, the way you made me feel like I mattered. I need that again. I need you. His voice cracked, and for a flicker of a moment I saw the boy I once loved. But it was only a flicker. Because standing there in that cafe with my client waiting patiently at the counter, I realized something. The man in front of me wasn't seeking love, he was seeking rescue. And I was no one's rescue anymore. For a moment, the cafe seemed to hold its breath. My client lingered near the counter, polite enough to give us space, but curious enough to watch. Daniel's eyes stayed fixed on me, wide and frantic, like a man who had just realized the ground beneath him was gone. Katrina, he pleaded again, his voice cracking. I was wrong about everything. The list, Sophia, all of it. I don't care about any of that anymore. I just want you. I studied him quietly. His hands shook, his shoulders sagged. The arrogance, the mockery, the ambition that once blinded him, all gone. I remember that list I said, finally, my voice low, steady. The one you and your friends made. A list of all the things I didn't have. He swallowed hard, guilt flashing in his eyes. You laughed at me, Daniel. You told me I wasn't a prize, just a project. You reduced 6 years of my life to a joke. I shook my head slowly. I'll never forget that. He tried to interrupt, but I raised a hand, stopping him cold. You were right about one thing. I didn't have what was on that list. I didn't have a fancy car, or a big house, or a glamorous career. And you know what? I still don't. I took a step closer, my voice soft but cutting. But you, Daniel, your list is longer now than mine ever was. You don't have a partner. You don't have a home. You don't have respect, trust, or peace. You burned through all of it. And the saddest part, you don't even have yourself anymore. His lips trembled. Katrina, please. No. My voice was final, calm. You made your choice, and I made mine. For a long second, we just stood there, the weight of 6 years pressing down like a storm. But for me, it wasn't heavy anymore. It was air, clean, sharp, and freeing. I turned back toward my client, who was waiting patiently with the deep blue watch in his hand. His face lit up as I approached, and I smiled gently, placing the finished piece in his palm. She'll love it, I told him. It's strong enough to last a lifetime. Behind me, Daniel's voice broke once more, but I didn't turn back. His pleas faded into the hum of the cafe, blending with the clink of cups and the soft chatter of strangers. As I walked out into the gray afternoon, I slipped my hands into my coat pockets and felt the weight of the cracked trench watch I had carried all this time. The one Daniel once told me wasn't worth fixing. Maybe he was right. Some things aren't meant to be fixed. But me, I had fixed myself, piece by piece, gear by gear. I paused, letting the city noise wash over me, and whispered to myself, I may be content, but contentment is gold, and some lists are worth burning.